Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to trace one of the most spectacular chain reactions of human progress in all of history. We're talking about the massive rebirth that literally pulled Europe out of the mud of the Middle Ages and laid the very foundation for the modern world we live in today. And yet, you might have noticed, we've decided to render our visual metaphors today using a uniquely comical macaroni aesthetic. Because honestly, what better way to explain the complex layers of history than with pasta, right?
But jokes aside for a second, are we living in a renaissance right now? Take a look at this. On the left, you've got a Renaissance masterpiece from centuries ago, and on the right, a highly complex modern 2026 AI creation. Sure, they look different, and they were obviously made using completely different tools, but the core human drive behind them, it is exactly the same. To figure out if we're actually in a renaissance right now, we have to look back at the very first one. We need to understand how a few generations of thinkers, artists, and rebels just decided to stop looking at the ground and start looking up at the stars.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The Black Death hangover. 2. Humanism and the polymaths. 3. Breaking the flat plane. 4. The information nuke. 5. Science and global exploration. And finally, 6. The 2026 digital renaissance.
Section 1. The Black Death hangover.
So let's travel back to the 14th century Middle Ages. It was, well, an incredibly bleak time. People were basically focused entirely on just trying to survive the misery of daily life. And then, an absolutely unimaginable tragedy struck. The plague wiped out a full third of Europe's population. I mean, just think about that. It's a staggering, heartbreaking loss. But historically, it created a massive paradox. The 67% of the population that survived suddenly found themselves in a fundamentally altered reality. You see, this missing slice of the population meant the survivors suddenly had more wealth per capita, more land available, and this burning, almost frantic urgency to celebrate life. Life was short, it was fragile, and it was suddenly worth living to the absolute fullest.
And this new perspective collided with a massive influx of cash. We're talking about a golden mountain of wealth concentrated right in Florence. The Medici family, along with other wealthy merchants, became these patrons of the arts. They essentially bankrolled an intellectual explosion, acting a whole lot like the billionaire tech celebrities of our modern era. And then, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 acted as this major intellectual catalyst. When the Byzantine Empire fell, Greek scholars fled to Italy, and they brought with them ancient texts from heavyweights like Plato and Aristotle, knowledge that had been completely lost to the West for centuries. So all of a sudden, you have big money and ancient wisdom mingling right there in Italy.
Section 2. Humanism and the polymaths.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how, with this new wealth and recovered ancient knowledge, there was a rapid-fire shift in the human mindset. In the old way of the Middle Ages, the focus was entirely on the afterlife. Man was seen merely as a sinner, and the world was just this vale of tears you had to suffer through. But humanism, led by thinkers like Petrarch, introduced a radical new way. Human beings actually had value, dignity, and most importantly, the potential for absolute greatness right here on Earth. It was an incredibly empowering, game-changing shift. And the ultimate expression of this new human potential was the Renaissance man. We call this a polymath. As defined here, it's a person of wide-ranging knowledge learning. Just think of Leonardo da Vinci. The guy wasn't just a painter. He was simultaneously an artist, an engineer, an anatomist, and a musician. He was the ultimate creator of the era, brilliantly exploring every single facet of what the human mind could possibly achieve.
Section 3. Breaking the flat plane.
Now, this new human potential didn't just stay trapped inside people's heads, it manifested physically in art, fundamentally transforming how humanity literally saw the world. Renaissance art didn't just look nicer, it used science to trick the human eye. Through linear perspective, brilliant artists like Brunelleschi and Masaccio used math and a single vanishing point to create the absolute illusion of 3D depth on a completely flat canvas. They broke away from the flat, two-dimensional limits of the Middle Ages. They literally used geometry to recreate reality.
And the lengths they went to for realism? Absolutely extreme. Completely hands-on science. Michelangelo and Da Vinci famously dissected actual human cadavers, just to understand how muscles and bones functioned beneath the skin. Picture Da Vinci's intricate, hyper-accurate anatomical sketches for a second. Because of that insane dedication, the human form in works like the David or the Sistine Chapel reached a level of perfection not seen since ancient Greece. Meanwhile, up in the Northern Renaissance, artists like Jan van Eyck and Albrecht Dürer were focusing on intense, microscopic detail using newly developed oil paints. Art and science were suddenly inextricably woven together.
Section 4. The Information Nuke.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive turning point. Up until now, these incredible ideas were mostly just contained to the super elite. But then came the technology that changed everything. Pre-1440, it took months to hand copy a single book. Knowledge was completely isolated. But in 1440, Johannes Gutenberg invents the movable type printing press, and boom, the world explodes. Ideas can be mass-produced. Literacy absolutely skyrockets. The strict monopoly of the church held on information completely crumbles, which directly paves the way for the Protestant Reformation and the scientific revolution. It was a rapid, explosive evolution from handwritten isolation to a mass-produced, democratized information network.
Section 5. Science and Global Exploration.
With ideas now spreading like wildfire across Europe, human curiosity couldn't be contained just to art and philosophy anymore. The Renaissance spirit turned its gaze outward, to the universe and to our own planet. People started deeply questioning the very nature of reality itself. The old view firmly placed the Earth right at the dead center of the universe. But then came the Copernican shift. Copernicus, and later Galileo, challenged this fundamental core belief, proving that the Earth actually revolves around the sun. Human beings were suddenly no longer the physical center of everything, yet at the same time, they realized they had the immense scientific power to actually understand their true place in the cosmos.
And while some were looking up at the stars, others were looking across the vast, terrifying oceans. Driven by this intense Renaissance curiosity and, okay, let's be honest, the pressing need for lucrative new trade routes, explorers like Columbus and Magellan set sail. They fundamentally changed the map of the world. Just think about the magnitude of that for a second. A single idea of a spherical, explorable globe, backed by some gold and a whole lot of courage, turned a continent of mostly isolated peasants into global explorers, challenging the very edge of the map.
Section 6. The 2026 Digital Renaissance.
Now let's move to and see how this builds into our modern world. Let's do a hard cut 500 years forward to right now. The parallel is totally undeniable. In the 15th century, the printing press democratized books and broke information monopolies. Today, in 2026, a lot of historians argue we are firmly inside a digital renaissance. The internet and artificial intelligence have democratized creation itself. The creator economy allows literally anyone with an internet connection to be an artist, a publisher, or even a modern-day digital polymath.
But with these wild new AI tools that can generate stunning art and complex text in mere seconds, we're faced with a really profound, heavy question. What does it mean to be uniquely human? As we grapple with machines that can seamlessly mimic our creativity today, we are actually debating the exact same humanist concepts that Petrarch and Da Vinci were exploring centuries ago. What is our earthly potential? What is our human dignity when a machine can paint a masterpiece?
The absolute core takeaway here is this. Progress isn't a straight line. It's a cycle. Sometimes, to move forward and figure out our place in this wild AI-driven world, you have to look back at the best ideas of the past. The formula for human progress is just a continuous repeating cycle of questioning, creating, and aggressively expanding our horizons.
The original Renaissance proved that ideas, a little bit of gold, and a whole lot of courage can truly end an age of darkness. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. As we navigate the massive technological shifts of 2026, are we actually ready for our own rebirth, or are we still just waiting around for someone else to paint the next ceiling? Think about your own role in this modern Renaissance. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and remember, keep looking up.